Cave Story was created in 2004 by Daisuke Pixel Amaya and the kickstart of indie games as a whole. Originally made as a freeware game, quickly forming a fandom and a tribute site a few years later, cavestory.org by the way, containing fan translations of the original freeware game. Remember, the game was created in Japan, so the game was only in Japanese. Pixel created Cave Story / Dokutsumo Gantari, the direct translation to Cave Story, over 5 years as a passion project. With the intro out of the way, it's time to start the review. The gameplay in Cave Story is simple. You shoot stuff. A lot. And collect Doritos, or weapon cores, as I like to call it, and take one guess what they do. If you set upgrade your weapon, then you're correct. Also, I'm not surprised that the footage spoiled it. In Cave Story early on, you can get the missile launcher that launches missiles, but only has so many missiles in it directly. If you kill enemies, they have a chance to drop more missiles if you use them up. You can only have 10 at first, but you can upgrade how many missiles you have by finding missile upgrades in chests. You also only have 3 HP when you start the game, but you can find health capsules to increase it, accompanied by this very nice jingle. In Cave Story, you can also find weapons. Some are completely optional, like the bubbling, and others like obtained through story events. More on that later. Other weapons you need to trade a weapon or two to get, like the snake. Cave Story has really responsive controls that are simple and aren't taught to the player through a text box. You need to learn the controllers to leave the first room. There are also controller support, but controller controls don't work as well as the keyboard. In Cave Story, you talk to people. A lot. And you really learn about what's going on by talking to people, and that's great, because barely anything is told to the player when you start, which has the player wondering what's happening and why it's happening. And the story requiring the player not to just rush through the game, to listen to people. There are also a ton of things ranging from key items and optional collectibles that boost something, and collectibles that do nothing. Collecting these items are fun and give the game more replay value. The gameplay is simple and solid and very easy to understand like the game's controls should be. But the jump is really floaty. Other than that, no other flaws can be noted. Gameplay is 9 out of 10. I'll be talking about the story next, so if you have yet to play Cave Story, then skip to the time card on the screen, or else you will be spoiled. And that's it, 99.9% of people who didn't even flinch at my spoiler warning. Let's get into the story. So, you first see a cutscene where this green-haired guy in a little shelter tries to go on Discord to DM someone named Sue. This guy's name is Kazuma. Keep in mind that he also ate a cockroach. It was a joke. Then you start the game. As this robot named Quote, who has lost his memory after remembering how to move, he steals this guy's gun, the Polar Star, and uses it to destroy blocks that were in his way before, and kills this door that has an eye in it. Supposedly it's corrupted. After Quote enters the door, we get a little cutscene with these bunnies. These bunnies are actually called Mimiga. The Mimiga on the left is King, and he's the leader of the Mimiga. The Mimiga on the right is called Toroko. Keep her in mind. Also, King and Toroko are arguing about a key, and Toroko says something about soup, or Sue. Oh my gosh, that's what the green-haired guy was talking about. Then Quote falls down. Long story short, Quote finds Toroko in a little shack, and bad guys show up. The big bar soap-looking guy is Balrog, and his signature line is huzzah, or oh yeah, or he's Kool-Aid Man, I guess. And the witch-looking girl is Misery. They're looking for Sue to give to their master, the doctor who's gained control of Misery and Balrog through an ugly-looking hat called the Demon Crown. More on that later. Misery takes Toroko, and the player obviously declines Balrog's request to fight him. Court informs Jack, the sheriff Mimiga, who informs King that Toroko's been taken. Oh noes! Quote accesses some house and makes it to the Egg Corridor, the first real level. This level teaches the player that enemies have attacks too, and if you aren't careful, you're gonna die. Oh, and the thing at the bottom of the screen instantly kills you. Quote finds this Mimiga that so happens to be Sue fighting this monster thing that so later happens to be an enraged Mimiga, more on that later, who grabs Sue and runs off. Quote annihilates the enraged Mimiga and saves Soup, and Sue tells Quote that she needs the password to hatch a dragon to escape the island that Cave Story takes place on. Sue figures Kazuma would know how to hack into the computer, so she leaves. Sue gets the DMs from Kazuma and learns of his location, only to get put in a cage by King for the reason on screen. So Sue sends Quote to save Kazuma. Quote goes to Bushlands to find Kazuma stuck in his shelter, so Quote blows down the door with a bomb that he got. Back at Soup's place, we learn about the red flowers, which so happen to make Mimiga enraged. Oh no! And the doctor, who so happened to be the bad guy, wants the red flowers to make the Mimigas attack the humans on Earth. And did I mention that Cave Story takes place on a floating island just above Earth? So Doc wants to take over the world basically. Well, that's just great. So Quote goes to Sand Zone to destroy the red flowers and meets a Curly Brace, a girl robot taking care of some Mimiga. She first fights Quote, then backing off and realizes that Quote has a gun that shoots fire, and when Quote is not a killer robot, kinda. Not really. So Quote then proceeds on to get some game theory lore done somehow. Yeah, the Mimiga ate the red flowers to fight back against the killer robots and the war, in quotation marks. The person Jenka that told of the said lore happens to have the key to the warehouse that has the red flowers, and Balrog takes the key from her, and then the saddest boss fight occurs. Toroko is forced to eat a red flower by Misery, Balrog, and the Doctor, and turns rabid seconds later. The king gets there seconds too late and dies defending Toroko, and Quote is left to fight rabid Toroko. Did I mention that after the red flower effects wear off / the Mimiga are defeated, the Mimiga who ate the red flower dies? Yup! So Toroko and King both die a sad death at the hands of the Doctor. Technically you were assistants, but you know, we don't talk about that part around here. We don't talk about it. But as King's final breaths tell Quote to avenge him and to take his sword. Then Misery sends Quote to the Labyrinth, a place full of enemies, spikes, and havers, and secret areas. Isn't that just swell? So Quote fights his way through the first few screens, then he gets to the camp, where he finds Curly stuck in the Labyrinth too. We get a cure-all for Curly, and she goes off to the boulder chamber, oblivious to the fact that there's a cat tank monster right next to the camp. Moving on, we see Professor Booster fall down a pit. We have a choice here that will affect the ending we get and how the world will end up, so perk up and pay attention. We can A, go down there and check on Professor Booster and see if he's okay and be a pal, or B, be the biggest jerk possible and ignore Professor Booster as he sits dying uncomfortably as possible. Or C, attempt the non-existent flipped ending. More on that later. If you said A, then you're totally incorrect! Look, I know what you're saying, but doesn't Booster die if we leave him there? Don't worry, he'll be fine. After making this jump, also, just a little editor note here. Oh my gosh, this jump sucks. Pixel and Acalis, I'd love for you guys to know how bad this jump is. After making this jump, we make it to the boulder chamber, which, as the name implies, there's a boulder that's blocking the exit. Quote and Curly try to move it, but can't. Then at the worst time ever, again, Balrog shows up to attempt to screw us over. But Quote easily takes him out, only to force him to move the boulder and to give us the super missiles. Hooray! After fighting through the next area, Quote and Curly find themselves at the core's spot. That's what I'm calling it because I don't know the name. Of course, if you left the booster, then you can get a secret item, the tow rope. That will be needed for the best ending, or the true ending, or the third ending. After throwing dust in the big eye that is the core, Misery and Doctor show up to not only attempt to screw Quote by filling the screen with water and to heal the core. So back to the room filling with water thing. Curly gives Quote her air tank, sacrificing herself to ensure Quote's survival. Remember how on the tow rock we picked up? Well, we can use that on Curly to take her with us into the Waterway. The Waterway, or the Living Waterway, is a calm transition into the hectic climax of the story. In the Waterway, you can find a cabin, and if you have Curly with you, rest in the bed, and upon waking up, Quote checks the computer to find that there's apparently something in a book in the bookcase about draining flooded robots. Hooray! After waking up, Curly says something and falls back asleep, and the game gives player a choice that first changes the ending, and second tricks the player, and third makes you think. You can A, leave Curly in the Waterway cabin, and wonder how Curly will leave the Waterway, or B, take Curly with you. If you said A, take Curly with you, then you are correct. At the end of Waterway, Quote fights Ironhead, a character from the character of Cave Story Pixel, Ika-chan. Just wanted to throw that out there. Ironhead's from Ika-chan. After defeating Ironhead, Curly floats away. Don't worry, she'll be fine. And Quote ends up in a slightly more dreary and empty Mimiga village. When Quotes end up back at Soup's place, out of teleporter cometh, drum roll please! Professor Booster! Oh my gosh, Booster isn't dead. See, told ya! And as a reward for not checking on him, he gives it the Booster 2.0. With Booster 2.0, you can go back to First Cave and trade your Polar Star for the Spur, with a funny cutscene. Afterwards, Quote finds himself in a corridor, but broken and swarming with enemies and spikes and more spikes. Quote makes it to the room that he actually met Soup at. He finds Cosmo, who gives Quote a choice to escape with him on a dragon or not. If you go with Kazuma, you get the bad non-existent ending, where the Doctor takes over the Earth. But of course we choose not to take it and move on to the Outer Wall, which has no story progression. The Plantation, where he finds Curly void of memory. The green jacket guy mentions a mushroom that can return someone's memories. And where would you think that the mushroom is? A, the cemetery, where you get a key, or B, in the plantation? If you said B, then you're totally, completely incorrect. Remember the door at the top of the screen in the cemetery? Well, go there after talking to the guy in green, and quote answers some questions, really trippy questions, and gets the mushroom badge. That does nothing. After quote confronts the mushroom that gave him the badge, they battle, and if not one of the easiest bosses in the game. Quote then feeds Curly the mushroom. She remembers everything and gives you the Iron Bond. You need to get this item to get the best ending. So then Quote makes his way to one of the Mimiga rest spots, where he finds the fisherman guy from the beginning of the game. He says he's going fishing and we can come, so going with him gives you the teleporter room key, and just across the way is the teleporter room. Big surprise there. And as Quote is about to use the teleporter, he gets jumped by this jerk. So now he's trapped in the jail and gets an item. A letter from Soup, containing some game theory lore and a password for a hideout. Fun fact, did you know that the password is just Cave Story but backwards? Oh, I found that a while ago. Yeah, this hideout that Quote finds and has the password for, Quote meets Mamoran, Sue's mom, who wants to make a rocket to fly us up to the Doctor's throne. So she takes our booster and needs a sprinkler. So she gives us a Mimiga mask to converse with the Mimiga. They're not allowed to talk to us otherwise. And Quote meets one that has a broken sprinkler and needs it fixed. So Quote takes it to the rest area and gets a fixed one. And of course, being a jerk, gives it not to the Mimiga, but to Mamoran. And then Quote gets the controller and takes the rest and uses the random floppy disk at the bottom of the room. Then of course, for people who don't meet the necessary requirements for the best ending, and will get the normal ending if you take off with the rocket Doctor's throne without talking to the Mamoran to take off the Mimiga mask, you will get the fourth ending, the Mimiga mask ending, which is the same outcome as the normal ending, but in the pictures, Quote has a Mimiga mask. 3 of them has a Mimiga mask. So after using the rocket, Quote enters the final cave, which you are eligible for the best ending again. Then it will be the hidden version of the last cave, a harder version of the last cave with more precise Booster 2.0 use needed to pass on to the balcony. On the balcony for the normal or Mimiga mask ending is the final bosses, Misery, the Doctor, and the Undead Core. The Doctor has 2 phases, by the way. Misery is simple and easy to take out, and the Doctor, the Doctor. Can't listen to his face until he's dead. The Undead Core starts with a cutscene where Misery believes the Doctor is dead and teleports Sue there, telling Quote to leave the island or Sue dies. That's just great. Then the Undead Doctor, as Particles, shows up and is like, I'm undead and stuff. Misery's mad because she doesn't like the fact that the Doctor cheated death and proceeds to get possessed by the Doctor. And Sue gets turned into a half-human, half-Mimiga thing, and they fight. And then they fight with one of the most epic final boss themes of indie game history. After defeating the Undead Core on the normal ending, Core jumps off crumbling island in Sue, getting caught in the nick of time by Cosma. But in the true ending, if you go in the Free Fire Palace, at the ending section, there's a floppy disk, or a hole, that if you fall into, you get to the true final area, Sacred Grounds, or the Bloodstained Sanctuary, the hardest area in gaming history. Honestly, this room took me forever to beat. In one of the first couple rooms, we pick up Kirby with the color up. I don't know how she got here, but okay. Then and only then, after dying so many times, Quote and Curly make it through, barely not dying to the text boxes of lore. Quote and Curly find themselves at the Seal Chamber and fight Balos to destroy the Demon Crown, to break Misery and Balrog's curse. Music plays after spamming level 2 missiles like you've never spammed before. The walls cave in. Just as Quote and Curly get crushed, Balrog comes to save them, being sent by the now free Misery, and the 3 of them go off to live in the mountains. But wait, there's supposedly a 5th ending. But that was an April Fool's jig, as I find out. But I have video evidence! The footage is from a mod. That concludes the story. The story is great except for the fetch quests. There are like 3 or 4 fetch quests, and they all suck, and they're all filler. Especially to restore Curly's memory with the mushroom, that sucks. The story is great overall and is very straightforward. I have to give it a 7 out of 10 for the fetch quest. That is mostly because of the filler Jankus Puppy's fetch quest. They're all filler, by the way. They're all terrible. Before I conclude this review, I'd like to talk about the ports. And the music, of course. So there are two kinds of Cave Story ports, the official Nicalis ports and the fan-made ports. Starting with the Nicalis ports, Nicalis made a new version of Cave Story with the help of Pixel that is bigger and better, Cave Story Plus. So Cave Story Plus brings new 16-bit graphics, new soundtracks, new levels and challenge modes, playable boss, curly brace playable, boss rush, and sanctuary time attack to the table. Wow. For the $15 they charge, there is enough content, and I had played well enough to say that the new content is amazing. Cave Story Plus released on Steam, Switch, and Wii. We're not done with Nicalis just yet. Nicalis also released the slightly enhanced freeware Cave Story, which has Sanctuary Time Attack, Boss Rush, 2 new levels, and sound test or Jukebox. This version was released for DSi and 3DS. Now it's time for what the fans made. Oh, the fans. The fans made the freeware version playable in over 13 plus consoles, plus tons of translation for Cave Story. The freeware these consoles are Linux-based Haiku OS, Eros, Morph OS, Amiga OS4, Mac OS X, PlayStation Portable, Xbox, Dreamcast, Sega Genesis, GP2S Waves, and the TI Graphing Calculator? I'm pretty sure there's one for the DS, GameCube, and more. So there's one more Cave Story port left I have yet to talk about, that being Cave Story 3D. According to my sources, YouTube, Cave Story 3D sucks. Now I can't popularly review Cave Story 3D because I've never played the game, but what I do know is that the remastered soundtrack came from Cave Story 3D and it is the best soundtrack for Cave Story. More on that in a second. If you want a full analysis, go check out Nerdio's video to see that. Now speaking about soundtracks, Cave Story Plus is the best in the sound department. The freeware soundtrack is the original, if you couldn't already tell, and it is the second best, because some of its tracks are superior to the rest, like Oppression for the core boss fight. The remastered soundtrack is 10 out of 10. It is the best out of all of them, and my preferred choice over the others. Next is the Thematrax soundtrack. This one is really bad. I listen to my favorite tracks, aka Geothermal and Oppression, and I'm sorry, it sucks. Last but not the worst, is the new soundtrack. It's a little better than Thematrax, not really though. Overall, the music in the freeware version is pretty good, and the remastered version is freeware version is pretty good, and the remastered version is amazing. And the ability to pick and choose which one you want is great. The soundtrack's final score is 6 out of 10. When 2 of your soundtrack options suck, I'm not gonna give it the best score. Conclusion time! Cave Story is a masterpiece of a game created in 5 years by one guy who is loved by me and many others. From the characters to the places that you visit, it is great. Pixel, the creator of Cave Story, made another game, Gyro Blaster, or Gyro Blaster. Go check it out on Steam. Look, Cave Story has flaws, but very few of them, and the game has no known time-skipping glitches and speedruns, or known glitches to my knowledge, so I have the right to say Cave Story is a near perfect game. Outro. That was awesome. 3,000 plus words later, my review on Cave Story is done. At least the script and the recording. The script alone took way over 6 hours to make, and could you be so kind, future me, to show how long the recording and editing took? Anyway, you may have noticed, Cave Story fans, that I call Sue soup in this video several times. I made this pun one day while playing Cave Story and thought it was funny, so I brought it in. Now, let me tell you that I got the Mimiga Mask and bad editing just for this video. See what I do for you guys? Those 2 endings are terrible. They're the worst endings. The Bloodstained Sanctuary was very hard, to let you know, and the reaction upon winning looked a bit like this. Yes! 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 I hope you enjoyed. And there's going to be a Minecraft video around the corner, if I ever finish it. Hear the end card. Please follow on Twitch, Gamers4TV.